Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Well, first of all, Zadari Enterprises would like to tell the monk that his audio sounds kind of weird on the stream. Almost sounds like you're talking through a tube or something.
Hold on a moment.
Is it picking up the wrong microphone?
Yes, it was picking up the mic from my webcam.
Oh, fun.
Sorry about that, folks. These kind of things happen whenever you update your recording setup.
Okay, sounds good now. Second of all, Zadari Enterprises would like to remind everybody that not every bad thing that you dislike in fiction is capitalism or fascism. And also, to the man who made the most retarded free-run video I've seen this week, just because a demon doesn't indiscriminately kill people in free-run does not mean that they have a moral structure similar to humans. The demon you use as a fucking piece of evidence is a demon who, according to the manga and his own admission, isn't indiscriminately killing people because he's bored and wants to toy with them. He wants to find out if he can feel human emotions and understand human morality, but he doesn't really think he will. Yes, I'm fucking pissed off at stupid people. Will you stop me from being pissed off? No. Fuck you.
This is the reason why I don't make politics my whole lifestyle or some sort of ideology my whole lifestyle. My lifestyle is games and nerd shit. That's all I need. Because I don't need any of that interpreting through media literacy bullshit. One of these days I will end up doing a whole monastic therapy on all of the reasons why anyone arguing about media literacy is full of shit. But tonight is not that night. No, tonight and for this weekend we are going to have fun. And I'm going to drag some of you kicking and screaming if you insist on not having fun.
I love having fun. I would rather have fun than be pissed off at stupid people who don't do media literacy and analysis correctly.
I just find the term media literacy to be far too pretentious. There's a whole lot more I could get into, but this is not the time or place.
Yes.
I will state, however, that with some of the people who are mad at Hasbro for how they are shitting on Gygax's legacy for the umpteenth time, I want y'all to keep that same energy when it comes to things outside of the most litigious role-playing game. Because every time I see that, I keep going, it smells like bitch in here.
I just look at it like, you are complaining about it simply because it is thing you like, instead of complaining about it for real reasons.
Yeah, like some of the people who are jumping on that, they don't give a shit about tabletop.
No, they're just jumping on it because they're shitting on Hasbro.
Which, I'll shit on Hasbro any day of the week, but I don't need to go fishing for that shit. Especially since if I fish out of season, I'm gonna get the attention of the DNR, and anybody in my neck of the woods know you do not want to get their attention.
Well, on top of that, you don't really need to fish when it comes to Hasbro. The entire fucking lake is polluted by their bullshit.
Also,
I don't pick out something to bitch about.
I don't eat junk food.
Yep. You want to pick something to bitch about Hasbro about? Just choose a day that ends in Y and choose almost anything they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And you there you go.
Yeah. But after our brief foray with Badass, we are back at the grand finale with the Robotic Age. And I know some might say, wait, that was quick. This is only like the 4th episode where you've talked about the Robotic Age. Yeah, well, in our defense, the core book is only 126 pages.
And it's it's fairly straightforward in most of its descriptors.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the lore and fluff, or like individual skill descriptors, we skipped over and skimmed.
Mm-hmm. And this is a very skill centric game, so there's a lot of stuff that got skimmed.
Yeah.
Oh, but this time around we're going into the GM section because while normally we skip that kind of thing, there are a couple things in the GM section that are worth mentioning for our parameters.
Yeah. Some small good things, especially the one thing we harp on all the time, guidance.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually some really nice guidance in this GM section.
Yeah. So we get to the GM section, aka running the game. Although I do like that it goes into the whole. It is recommended that players not read this section. Then right after it goes, okay, are all the players gone? Only GMs left? Good.
But the very first section we have, and we're not going to go into super nitpicky detail, is a section called "What kind of game are you running?" And I know that sounds like a well, duh question for most people who have played or GM'd tabletop games, but the opening paragraphs. This can be the hardest decision a GM has to make. Do you want to run a game where your players are stopping crime or creating it? Are they fighting for the rights of all or the rights of some? Are they operating in the real world or in cyberspace? Knowing what your game is going to be like will help your players make appropriate characters to exist in your story. For instance, you don't want someone making a human when the story is about androids rising to power. Below, you will find examples of games you can run, but GMs are encouraged to come up with your own ideas or even combine any of the examples. Now, I would like to say that maybe a human can fit into the story about androids rising to power by being a human collaborator or some sort of liaison between humans and androids.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always room for any character type, to be honest. But this goes through a bunch of like little thematic games.
Oh yeah.
And that is a type of guidance that is absolutely crucial to new GMs or GMs new to a game. For, here are some themes that this game is really good at running in. Sure, the appendix N of this game, the one where all the inspirations are listed that we went over at the very beginning, can help give a GM the feel of what the game is supposed to be like. But this is even better. And I really appreciate that this is in here.
Mm-hmm. And some of the examples they go into are shell collectors, which could be considered a kind of bounty hunting. Private security, which is self-explanatory. Cyberspace security, also self-explanatory. A trip to Mars, which is amusing because one of the expansions for this game is all about Mars. World War III, which we kind of covered when we went into the history. Human Pride, which is going into an all-human group fighting against a robot uprising. Or Kill All Humans.
Which is the other side. You become Skynet.
Mm-hmm. And then we have enemy groups. And this is where it gets into enemy factions. The first one of these is G27, who who have their name because it's a nod to Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 7. Is essentially an anti-robot faction. One that believes in fighting against the android menace. They're essentially they're essentially meant to fill in that extreme pro-human faction that you see in some science fiction and cyberpunk works.
Yep.
Then we have the Met.
Yeah. It's a reference to the way that you destroy a golem in Jewish mythos.
Mm-hmm.
On the head is inscribed Emet in Hebrew, which means truth. And then if you erase one symbol, the Aleph, it becomes Met, which means death and kills the golem.
Which
I like it because it's actually rather clever.
Mm-hmm. Which I would say a met in this setting is akin to the it is essentially a pro Android movement, but on the opposite end of the spectrum to G27.
Well, they're androids
Mm-hmm.
that were they're androids and they're sometimes transhumans, but they are not cyborgs or humans, straight up.
Yeah. And the big thing is, in some regard, being anti-human. But of course, then there's the Chosen of the First Mind, which has enough there that it gets a double page treatment instead of a one page treatment. And is more about messing around in and getting control over cyberspace. Stating that the control covers 4 main areas: sensor manipulation. She can alter any text, written, and audio of anything in cyberspace. She knows better than to announce her presence directly, but she also knows the right words at the right time. Corruption sense. Can sense any artificial mind at stage 2 corruption if they're within 500 meters of where she focuses her attention. Corruption manipulation. She instantly knows the location of any artificial mind with the corrupted quirk that logs into cyberspace. And virus creation. Can manipulate raw code to create viruses under her full control. So it kind of hints at what we talked about, how the first person to try and do a full dive into cyberspace went into a coma.
Yeah. This is an extension upon that, where she went for upload and was pronounced dead, but was actually just her mind went throughout the entire, the entirety of the internet, of the cyberspace.
Mm-hmm. And in that regard, you could consider it, if of the villain factions that are brought up in this section, I'd say the Chosen of the First Mind is probably the most dangerous, or at least the most horrifying.
Especially since she can apparently just absorb other people's brains when they came to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like all those other experiments to upload minds, those were her just eating them.
Yeah, but of course there are other enemies like ex-warbots, rogue drones, separatists, who oppose the alliance between the two Americas, viruses, core thieves, and gangs. And then we get into building enemies. And for this one, I'll let you take it.
Yep. So we start, building enemies seems like it's going to be pretty straightforward. But the very first thing that they say is enemies cheat. When players are creating characters, they receive an exact number of character points, but GMs have no such restriction and can build enemies with any number of character points. GMs have control over how tough their enemies are. Do they prefer enemies to be giant threats and players to avoid direct confrontation? Or do they, what style of confrontation do you want? And how to build them. And then the second section says enemies are better equipped. They have everything. They have access to everything players have. All enemies also have access to 1 new weapon enhancement, 1 new element, and 4 new upgrades to make sure that they have extra force behind them. And so we get the NPC, essentially the enemy's exclusive weapon enhancements, elements, and upgrades. You get Mook, Rival, Power Drain, Corruption as a weapon element, Martian Charge Technology, Martian Crystalline Reinforcement. And there's a little thing here that says the Martian upgrades can drastically increase a character's power level. Taking both and a power level 5 weapon gives you an incredible power level 9 attack after just 1 round of charging. Because of this, taking both is not recommended for non-boss enemies. And they have a section regarding the different sizes of enemies as well.
Mm-hmm.
Such as little enemies being things like combat drones, tracker bats, a worm of the first mind. Medium size being a devout, which is basically a human of the G27, shock troopers, the Trojan of the first mind. Big enemies are, an example is a mobile light tank or a war golem or a macro virus. And bosses are very specific examples, such as for the G27, we have the high speaker exosuit. It's a very, very specific example. Mm-hmm. Then we have a level above bosses. So there's a level that's called antagonists. These are your BBAGs, your final showdown. And the example they use is the leader of Emmet Met. That being Met. Of course he took the name Death, or she, or they. And it breaks down what they'll have regarding, their skills, their fighting styles, their abilities and upgrades and weapons. And then at the last part, it has enemies are unpredictable. The above rules are good guidelines, but never forget that these are just suggestions. Due to the nature of character creation, no 2 groups will be alike, so it's nearly impossible to predict how any group of players will handle any situation. And then it basically goes into how, you should mix things up depending on your group composition, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Although I like this last point because we always try to make this point, and we're glad when other people make this point too. Your job as the GM is to run a fun game for everyone. If your players aren't having fun, then you need to change something. And of course, the idea of what a group's game is going to be fun is going to also change group by group.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's watched our Cloister episodes, our group likes to have games where there's some challenge, but we generally still want to be the guys who are going to be winning in the end. Sure, there's risk. Sure, there's some fuckery when we test new shit or play around with systems in a way that probably shouldn't be played around with quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
But our group likes to keep play a little more lighthearted. Some of our guest GM stuff has been very, very balls to the wall, and we've loved that too. It's a nice change of pace. There are other people who want that death march, that meat grinder, and that's all right. You can design for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into what looks to be a D100 randomizer for a type of enemy weapon.
I look at this as a case of, if you need to pull a certain weapon build out of your ass, roll a D100 on this.
Yep. If you don't want to design weapons per your enemies, just roll this and give it to the one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes into experience, and I'll leave that to you, Monk.
Mm-hmm. So, experience is what players learn from each fight. Experience is handed down at the end of each session in the form of character points, or CP. Players can spend this CP to improve their characters just as they did during initial character creation, and it's earned in 3 ways. General experience, so things like showing up, bringing something to the game that helps everybody, using if your quirk was important to the session or caused trouble, a crowning moment, or a campaign milestone. Like attendance, that's 1 CP. Community, that's 2 CP. Crowning moment, that's 3. Campaign milestone is 5. Then battle experience. So experience for each enemy defeated that session. Defeated could mean destroyed, subdued, or just successfully avoided. And one of the things I like that's here is each player should gain the CP as long as they are present for the fight and actively participating. So none of that, you only get experience from kills bullshit. And depending on the size, that determines how much CP you might get. Like littles, which are basically meant to be swarms, 1 CP per group. Mediums, 1 each. Bigs, 5 CP. Bosses, 15. Antagonist, 30.
Yep.
And then performance experience, which is handed out by the GM, and I do like that they're referred to as power, not powers, but as awards. So the most valuable player award, the role-playing award, and the pity points award.
Man, you'd have a tough time choosing between John and I for that role-playing award.
Yeah. As far as the pity points award, I could see myself giving that to whoever got screwed over by the dice gods the most.
So Neff got it.
Back in the day, I would have retitled it the Mike Shell Award because he was always the target of the dice gods.
Let's
see, then it goes into rewards, which is more of a advice thing. But the sidebar about no gold is something I do want to go into. If you or your players have played a role-playing game before, you're probably used to receiving money from battles. From gold to gems to even credits, sometimes you just need to kill 1 more orc to afford that shiny new sword. Too bad you don't purchase weapons in the robotic age. Your players' characters have money, they use it to buy entertainment, places to live, and maybe even food, but they never need to use money to improve their character. Money is for day-to-day living, not for combat. Money should be handled in character, with each character considered to have enough to get by with at any time, unless they take poor as a quirk, of course.
Yeah, so weapons are purchased with character points because you customize your weapon using the same system.
And I'm actually glad for that. I do remember when we first debuted the Sage demo for our project, there was a bit of pushback about the fact that we chose to not do a traditional guild system or a traditional GP, basically traditional currency.
Well, the first thing we'd have to do is determine how useful, if we're going to determine how useful a thing is that you're going to purchase so that you can then determine how much gil it's going to be. The weapon and armor systems make that intensely hard. Because what value do you give to each tag? Especially the tags you can take multiple times.
Not to mention the fact that even if you do assign value, that's value based. That value is based on one particular setting, and we wanted to be setting agnostic.
Well, I think we could have done setting agnostic and given values. It just would have been insanely tedious and not good. It would have resulted in too much taxes.
As well as the fact that we wanted to future-proof things.
Yeah. I love Ten Rabancho Zero and all, but honestly, the part that does tend to trip up most people I try to get to play it, I hate that that's what gets them,
you
caught up
when
in
it comes to what trips them up.
The karma calculations.
Yeah, especially given that whole 108 rule.
Hmm. And it's really the only thing that trips people up about that game when I play it with them. But keeping that sort of bookkeeping out of the game was kind of our goal.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that it's here as well, because that sort of bookkeeping can slow down a game that's meant to be faster paced.
Not to mention I think and the reason why I drew a parallel between what they're doing and what we're doing is because in both cases the particular way your character is kitted out is extremely customizable. So
Yep.
assigning value to that on a monetary level would lean a bit more in the simulation end of things, and I do not feel the Robotic Age intends on being a simulationist game. Like
Hmm.
this isn't Torchbearer where it's strictly tracking your 5 foot ropes.
Hmm.
And yeah, I know some people will bring up something like say Shadowrun, but if I'm being honest, I play fast and loose when it comes to currency in that, and focus more on karma,
Yeah.
largely because of the fact that karma in karma is going to be used as the advancement setup anyways, and barring that, you have more simplified versions like say the resources advantage in any game using the storyteller system.
Yeah.
Like I know for a lot of people using that kind of currency setup is the standard, but in some cases you end up with instances where in order to get certain equipment you've got to spend a lot.
Hmm.
Like
Sometimes too much.
yeah, like some do you remember the prices for certain weapons in Anima and how ridiculous they were?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I
Yeah, that's
absolutely
one
do.
major example. Even as much as I love Sword World to death, it's not immune to this kind of thing. Especially when you look up how expensive it is for decent weapons at the higher tiers, where you're spending thousands.
Hmm.
But see, after that is a introductory mission, the ranch, as well as a cyberspace mission, the quest. I'm glad that they have that. And then it goes into the back end. Then we have the character sheets proper. Um, I do like the way it's set. I do like the way it's set up. And then it teased at the end the Mars book, which I will note that there were a few books. In fact, there were two expansion books in particular. One of them was Mars, which was a Martian supplement that focuses on Mars's history, some new vehicles, some new mecha, the introduction of things like genetically modified humans, think Martian born, a few GM only goodies,
Hmm.
and a micro expansion called Fully Customized, which was built around customization packets, and
Yeah.
some of them including some new rules. The customization packets were auto, so androids versus robots. It is which I'm pretty which you could make your jokes about near, although it doesn't say what year that the fully customized expansion came out on the PDF. EXE, all cyberspace all the time. That's very much Mega Man Battle Network. Um, HOD, or which they describe as post-apocalyptic dino hunting. So Cadillacs and dinosaurs. Um, R, which they describe as multicolor mecha team. I don't think I need to explain that one. T, which they describe as Car Robot Wars. I don't think I need to go into what that's going to be. T2, which is more Car Robot Wars. TTGL. I'm not even... You can figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is X, which they describe as Android Cops. But they were essentially packets to allow someone to emulate various media with the Robotic Age's setup. But with all that said, I think this is as good a time as any to go into our final thoughts regarding the Robotic Age. And I will say one thing in advance. I'd like to talk with Preston Poland on the matter if anyone can find where they are, or where anybody from True and One is.
Yeah, True and One has basically gone incognito. Incognito is technically the correct word.
Mm-hmm.
Incommunicado is a better one, though. They looking at their pages in various places, from Facebook to their webpage, every place else, they haven't updated anything since 2019. They have not talked about stuff since 2019 at the latest.
Mm-hmm. And but even with that, one of the greatest strengths that this game has is the customization. That being said, the customization is going to result in a slightly higher floor.
Mm.
Now, this is not as bad of a higher floor as some games I've covered on this channel, but it is something you're gonna have to address as a kind of elephant in the room. Because of that, I would recommend anyone trying for the first time to use the pre-gens at first and then mess around. I also would not recommend somebody play full human for their first game. Just be, especially given how squishy you're gonna be in that setup.
Mm-hmm.
I still maintain that this could easily handle Mega Man. Even if we found some of the element circle alignments to be a little weird.
Kind of ish, but it's the classic Mega Man rock paper scissors dynamite gun situation.
Yeah. I mean, we at least don't have a situation of Metal Man is weak to his own damn weapon. But even with all of that, some games are going to have a more extended session 0. This is definitely one of them. The other part that's going to be the higher floor is the fact that it's going to require the GM to have a bit more of a hands-on approach regarding what the players can and can't do for the session, depending on the direction. That's why we highlighted that whole what sort of game the GM wants to play kind of thing very early on.
Yep.
Because if you're let's say you're using this to run something akin to standalone complex in all but name, there are certain things that you're going to have to cut the players off from taking during character creation, just as a default. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but it is something you're gonna have to deal with. And I'm not trying to single out the Robotic Age, because this is a common elephant in the room when you're dealing with games that operate largely on point buy. So, with that said, if I were to put this in my usual metric, I think I'd put the robotic age under recommended. That higher floor is the main thing that's keeping me from going with strongly recommended. And that's not to say this is a bad game. There's just some asterisks that you're gonna have to deal with as a GM and as a player. What about you, Zan?
In the end here, I think that that there's actually a lot of guidance. Only a little bit more would have been necessary to make the game probably the smoothest it could be, but that's splitting hairs at that point, in my opinion. I think that this is going to suit well what it's trying to achieve. I absolutely believe that there's actually quite a lot of guidance that's going to help get around some of the analysis paralysis and some of the other things that could come from a highly customizable system such as this. Especially since, like we discussed when we looked at character creation, the packages are there. There's those packages and other things that help inform how your character might actually be. Like I said, I really appreciate the whole "what type of game are you running" section. I'm not going to harp on that more than you already have just now. But it seems like it'd be a fun little game to play, a fun little game to just prance around in. It. I think in your system, this would either go recommended or strongly recommended.
Yeah, I guess the vibe is just shy of greatness.
Yep.
Though, for those GMs who love to tweak the hell out of things, and those players who love to tweak the hell out of things and take certain characters and different IPs and put them onto a character sheet, this is definitely for those kind of players. You know, the kind of person who spends multiple session zeros, weighing in how they'd run X, Zero, or Axel in a given game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the kind of people who spent way too much time on Michael Serbrook's website. You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand because I did that. Those are the kind of people that would fit here. But with that said, as tempting as it would be to cover like Mars or fully customized, it'd be more of the same if we did. So I would like to take this time to go into what we've got planned for the coming month. Now, I know normally it's our tradition that we do a one-shot between seasons, but next week is Black Friday. Now, normally that doesn't matter a damn thing to me, but it is the day after Thanksgiving. I'm going to be out of town for Thanksgiving. Zan is going to be out of town for Thanksgiving. So we are just not going to be doing any major Valley of the Judge stuff on the day after Turkey Day. Plus, I am immune to the turkey voodoo knockout, but at the same time, I know that there's other things I'm going to be indulging in during Thanksgiving, especially given I'm going to be heading up north, further north. So it's best to just. So I'm going to be in recovery. I'm going to be in recovery mode with all of the insanity when the whole family is involved. Because, yes, no, not alcohol. Alcohol is not needed when it comes to the craziness that my immediate family gets up to.
Insanity happens. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, it's one of those things that happens when you've got when you have a bunch of athletically minded folk in the family, including myself, who are competitive with each other and will get into all kinds of shenanigans. Even if one of them is... We ended up getting a fruitcake one year that was so hard nobody could eat it, so we sanded the thing down and used it as a curling stone.
Yeah, that's just normal Minnesota things. I'm sorry.
And when I say sanded, I mean a full-on rotary sander, like you'd use a rotary saw.
Yeah, no.
I
As I said, As I said, that's just normal Minnesota stuff.
Mhm.
For those of you who don't believe me, I lived there 2 years. That's normal Minnesota stuff. Fuck you.
We all had to wear jackets inside the garage for the thing because we kept getting strays when we were sanding the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were being as safe as possible, but you're sanding a fruit cake. Debris is gonna happen. Personally, I'm amazed that the thing held together.
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, in 2 weeks, now that it's finally out, I can actually say it. We are going to be covering the Shin Megami Tensei TTRPG, specifically Tokyo Conception. I am looking around for to possibly do 2000X with another dance partner, but it's not going to be Zan or Monarch. I would like to get somebody who's equally as inclined when it comes to Mega 10, but that's going to be tricky. I might have to fill in the Mega 10 inclined person myself if worst comes to worst. Because both 2000X and Tokyo Conception managed to come out in a reviewable state in the same week.
Yep. It's a Christmas miracle.
Mm-hmm. One of them's a fan translation, the other one's obviously the official thing. We are covering Tokyo Conception. And, of course, tomorrow, tune in at around 3 p.m. Central, because we will be delving into New Edo as part of the Cloister of the Dice. The amusing part about doing that is the fact that Salty, our guest GM for that show, had to give himself a crash course on Roll20 on his server in preparation. And Neff saying it's more fun than old Edo. I don't know about that. But I will note this. Anyone who comes in calling New Edo cyberpunk, step forward so that you can learn the art of involuntary yoga.
My response is a little more vehement than the monks. Step forward to accept your inevitable face slapping.
I was gonna say I was just gonna fold their clothes with them still in it.
Yep.
But with that said, we will be back here. We'll be back here tomorrow for the Cloister, and I hope to see you here 1 week from Friday for our dive into the Shin Megami Tensei RPG. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
was I